Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to another indie book review. And this is one that I was really looking forward to, and that is, of course, World Serpent Arcanist by Shami Stovall. This is the fifth in the Frith Chronicles series, and she is just getting these out in rapid-fire succession. Like, the series started, 2 years ago, and we're already on book 5? But in general, this is going to be a slightly awkward review because I have more criticisms for this book than any other book in this series. The series up until now has been consistently on the higher end of my scale in pretty much every way. And in a lot of ways, this book still holds up. The world building is still good. The characters are still lovable. Pretty much all of my criticisms are revolving around plot, which of course makes it really hard to talk about without spoiling anything. But basically, if you shall remember from the end of book 4, and of course, if you want to go watch those reviews without being spoiled, I will have all the links to the previous books in the description below. But book 4 had a pretty monumental ending with Volk suddenly achieving true form status with Luthair, and it felt like this big moment, and there was this big reunion, and now we know that the second ascension is basically messing everything up, and they gotta go fight the big evil magic terrorists. And I was honestly intrigued to see how they were going to handle all that and getting to see Luthair in true form and all of that, which brings me to my first criticism is true form Volk and Luthair feel really underused in the book. I can't really name a specific situation in this book where I thought, oh, really good thing they're true form. We couldn't have done that before. Like, every situation where they were fighting felt like fights they'd had before, and especially because the character of Eviana, who is very, very new to training, felt like, well, she obviously was not at Volk's level, but she did not feel, the gap between them didn't feel as big as the gap between an apprentice Arcanist and true form Arcanist really should have been, and so it almost made it feel like the only reason that they turned true form at the end of the last book was to cure Volk of the plague rather than the more special reasons that true form is said to exist in this world. And in general, it felt a little bit wasted. And that was also the problem I had with a lot of the plot in this book is certain aspects kind of lessened the gravitas that happened in other books. Villains from other books, and I'm trying to speak so vaguely here, that were built up to be really impressive, brought down fairly simply, and I'm not going to tell you which villain. There's plenty to pick from in this series. But that was kind of the problem, was this book, in order to build up, kind of felt like it was making the other things lesser. No, I won't talk about that. That would be spoiling. Like I said, this is pretty difficult to talk about in depth, plot-wise. And the other one that was really annoying me is, this is the first time in this series that it's felt like a book has pure filler. Which again, this isn't the longest in the series. I think this is like the third longest in the series. Book 4 had about 600 pages. Book 3 had 700, and yet this is the book that I'm like, really? This really needed to be in here? And that is purely because of the love pentagon. Yes, love pentagon. Because yes, the third book was really long, but a lot of the extra stuff in that was to build up the world and show you the mechanics of fighting, and it was cool. In this one, all of the filler is, there's literally 4 different female characters that all want to get with Volk. And it takes up a large amount of the runtime of the book. Him freaking out that these 4 different women all want to get with him. And it's low-key obnoxious. I don't like that idea for a protagonist in the first place. I don't like the look at all the characters that want to get with the protagonist type feel. And beforehand, while yes, they hinted at these characters having some kind of ties to him, it always made sense. And even some of the ones were like, I don't really know that she actually wants to be with him because of him, or more like the idea that he represents. But in this one, it makes it very clear that these characters know they all genuinely, specifically want to be with him, and he's having so many girl problems. I'm like, okay, dude, there's a terrorist organization trying to end the world. Why are we focusing on this? And like, there was even times where Luther was like, focus, dude, focus. And I'm like, thank you. Freaking thank you, Luther. Now, the big thing is, and again, how do I talk about this without spoiling? But one of my other big criticisms is the ending. Now, Shami Stovall, traditionally for me, has had some of the best endings. The ending of the third book destroyed me. The ending of the fourth book healed me. Giant explosions, big reveals, always really dramatic in a good way. And I said that this one wasn't dramatic. It was very dramatic. It's just that it felt rushed. It felt too soon. Like I said before, there was a villain from a previous book that had been built up to be a big deal that suddenly no longer felt like a big deal because he was taken down fairly without issue. And in that case, it was like, yeah, we could have waited a little bit on that. And then there was another big moment that happened. And if you've read the book, just think of the big moment. You'll know what I'm talking about. That again, I wasn't against the idea of it. It fit in with certain character arc things. But again, it felt too soon. Like we should have gotten at least one more book before we went to that. And in general, I kept thinking like, just in general, this felt too soon. This felt too quick. And Volk as a character is beginning to feel way too protagonisty in a way that he had not before. Now, I realize that that is a very vague idea, but in other reviews I've talked about the idea of a protagonist that so many super duper ultra cool special things happen to this one character to the effect that it effectively breaks the verisimilitude of the world, because it's like no one person would have all of these super duper ultra special things happening specifically to them. And Volk kind of is there. I mean, we've talked about the 4 different female characters all wanting to get with him. I think like the only one of the young single female characters that doesn't want to get with him is a lesbian. Which I love Hexa, and I want more of Hexa. And I guess you count Bethica too, she's in that range, but like, yeah, it's a little bit ridiculous. And then some other things happen to him at the end of this book where it's like, oh, so he is just the super duper ultra special chosen one type. And that's not my favorite thing. I liked Volk at the beginning of this series where it was like, he was the son of criminals, and he was second bonded and had extra issues that other people didn't have, and he overcame them, where now it doesn't feel like he's been overcoming, even though the problems have gotten bigger. Like, the problems are huge. The problems are infinitely bigger in this book than they were in the first, second, or for most of the third before the ending. But it doesn't feel like he's overcoming anymore, because it feels more inevitable that, oh, of course, it's going to be fine. Of course he's going to get through, you know. So, in general, I'm still excited to see where it goes next. There's still all of the things that I loved from the previous books, but I'm not really going to go in depth in those because I went in depth in those on 4 separate videos now. So, like, I'm not going to keep repeating myself. And if you're that person that's watching this having not watched any of those or read the books, why? But regardless, it is still a worthwhile series. It is still something that, if you like the series up until now, you will continue to enjoy. I still ship Fane and Adelgis, and it's really funny, that they mention in the book that other people are shipping the 2 of them. I love that. And I'm really hoping that things will course correct a little bit in future books where it will begin to feel properly big and properly like they're overcoming things through sheer force of determination and will. But this one just was a little bit of a dip in the series for me. Still a 4-star, but compared to the other books that I was like, it's a little bit of a dip. So, definitely tell me what your favorite book of the series is if you've been reading these. And in general, I am still counting the series among my most hyped indie book series. Now, I am still closed for a while. Severely slowed down my review reading, so I don't think I'll be open anytime soon. Maybe summer. That's still the goal. But for now, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.